strike at the Clinton Corn Processing Company. To facilitate our note-taking, we would like to record our conversations today. We also need you to sign a form devised to meet Augustana College's research requirements and 2 other forms to give the recording as a gift to the Clinton Public Library. Essentially, this document states that 1, only the information that you are comfortable being used in the research will be used. 2, your participation is voluntary and you may stop at any time if you feel uncomfortable. And 3, you may choose to remain anonymous if you wish. Otherwise, your name may be used in future presentations and publications based on this research. Please sign the release forms after reading them if you agree to participate. After the recordings have been transcribed and you have placed whatever restrictions you would like on what information will be released, then the materials will be placed in the archives of the Clinton Public Library permanently. We thank you for your agreeing to participate.
All right, no problem.
We planned this interview to last no longer than 1 hour. During this period, we have several questions that we would like to cover. We do not foresee that any question will make you uncomfortable, but please let us know if it does and we can move to another topic. Please also let us know at any point if you need to end the interview earlier, and we will shorten the interview. On the other hand, if time begins to run short, it may be necessary to interrupt you in order to push ahead and complete this line of questioning or come back for a follow-up interview. Any questions before we start?
You substantiated my organizational part of it.
That's good.
Great.
So today is December 2nd.
Yes.
My name's Jamie Hockmuth.
And I'm Max Besmina. So let's just start off with some background. So could you please, for the record, state your name, along with spelling it, your current city that you're living in, your state of residence, and your present occupation?
Sure. My name is Jurgen. It's Jurgen. Duhr, D-U-H-R. I'm a resident of Clinton, Iowa. I recently retired as administrator of Sarah Harding, and I've been volunteering in the schools, and what makes this so special for me, my wife used to work here for 13 years.
So what is your interest with discussing the Clinton Corn Company strike?
I was obviously an employee. I was an accountant. And I probably shed a different light on it than a lot of people that were directly involved would have. But obviously, I know the importance of Clinton Corn to the community. They were paying like 45% of the property taxes for the entire city back when I was working for them. That quote may be wrong, but they provided a substantial amount of revenue for the city to have the services that we have. I had been in the Marine Corps. I came back and went to the University of Iowa and graduated, and I was working as an auditor with the Department of Agriculture. I did that for a few years, and I came back because I had an opening at Clinton Corn for an accountant, so I got tired of traveling, so I wanted to come back, and so I did. I was hired, and the interest that I have in the strike is to bring a perspective of, I parked my car at my parents who lived on Comanche Avenue, and I walked over and had to cross the picket line all the time, and they have an underpass that goes from Liberty Avenue to the ground, so I walked underground, and there were a couple of guys that were on strike, and they were making some comments, and I didn't really fear because I was in the Marine Corps, so that stuff didn't bother me. But they wanted to start getting physical, and fortunately, Mike Kronovich, who I think at the time was the business manager for Local Union 6, was there just seeing how the things were going on the picket line. And I said, Mike, I'm not here to cross your picket line. I'm not here to take your job. I'm trying to protect my job and your job. And I need to go in there and do that because we have, as an entity, a responsibility to our customers. At the time, we were one of the few manufacturers of high fructose corn syrup. We had the Japanese patent to produce that, and we, at one point, the president of Coca-Cola landed at the Clinton airport and came into Clinton to discuss if they could have 100% of high fructose corn syrup that was being produced for Coke. Obviously, we didn't have enough of a of a volume to do that, but at the same time, that was when sugar was 3 cents a pound, and then it went to 20 cents a pound, and those manufacturers didn't like the spikes in the cost, so they wanted a product that could have consistency in price and still affirm the same kind of quality that Coke had its reputation for. So when you look at what happened, they had a gentleman's agreement between Len Lewis at the time, who was the president at Clinton Corn, and the local Union 6. And they went to the Rialto Theater, which is no longer there, on 6th Avenue South, and the guys got drinking, for lack of a better term. And so management had really never said no to local Union 6. And my father was a member of the union, and I know that you have to work together collaboratively. You got to respect each other. So, I mean, my comments are just based on what should have happened versus what actually did happen. But they went into that meeting, and the guys had been drinking, and they didn't approve the contract, which resulted in the people like myself, who we worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, for the duration of the strike. And one of the things that really impacted me, not that I didn't know a lot, I just went out and they had rail cars coming in from Wyoming with soda ash on it, and that's part of the production process for high fructose corn syrup. And so I'm up on top of the rail car pushing down the soda ash, and then it's going into this building, and you had to watch this gauge and go up there and make sure everything was being done correctly. And so from that standpoint, they had 3 people in the union doing what I did. Not that I just did what I was told, and I did it well. So I think one of the things that became the downfall, there was like 1,200 or 1,300 employees at the time, and then that went down to like 700. And today ADM owns it, and they're working like with 550. So, I mean, I know technology has changed, but because management didn't want to say no, I mean, because they wanted labor peace, and they wanted to be, because we were one of the sole manufacturers of high fructose corn syrup. We were making, at the time, maybe 65% of the profit of Standard Brands. And Standard Brands, their product mix was such that they just wanted it to be level and go up slightly every year to keep up with inflation. They didn't like the spikes. So when that formula was sold to the Japanese formula for high fructose corn syrup was sold to like ADM and Staley. So the competition became really, really keen. I know that's off the subject of the strike, but one of the things that took place with all of that was that it divided families, it divided churches. I know that was really sad and tragic. But as I told Mike Kronovich, I said, Mike, we need to, to understand and respect each other. We need to be able to work together in harmony, and that's what broke the union. I don't know that they were out to break the union, but then, because I used to officiate and umpire high school and small college games, and one of my partners was a carpenter, and he sort of understood that, and he ended up going in business for himself. So, but at the same time, it created a lot of friction, a lot of strife in the community. It was us against them type of scenario, And so one of the things I thought that was really important in all of this was, you know, we're a small town, and at the time, you know, we probably had 5, 6, 7,000 more people living in Clinton at that time than we have today, just because of what has transpired in the international economy. And so, again, it was just a matter of saying, okay, if we're going to be the best, we got to have everybody working together. But so that's in a nutshell what my perception was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a lot of friends that were members of the union, and my spiel was the same no matter who I was talking to.
Mm-hmm.
We have to work in harmony, and we've got to realize that at the same time, not that this is pertinent, but my wife's parents live in Owatonna, Minnesota, which is near Austin, Minnesota, and Austin had a strike at Hormel, and the same thing that happened in Clinton, Iowa happened in Austin, Minnesota. I mean, just the division even within families. They had a neighbor who was a hog buyer and had both their sons working there. So, I mean, it divided their family. They wouldn't talk, you know, so it's, and that same thing happened in Clinton, so.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's my partner in officiating at the time was the fire marshal for the city of Clinton. And, you know, it was like they had a fire call down there, and the picketers didn't want to let the fire department come in just because they would be crossing the picket line.
Mm-hmm.
So the fire department union, you know, we got a job to do. We're not here to do anything. And so speaking of that, when one day was Labor Day that year, I think, and our neighbor, who was a chemist, was coming to work, and he was beat up, and so then that they moved the fire truck to the front gate to turn on the hoses if all of this continued. So that was something that really stuck out in my mind too. So, but again, I'm just I was doing what I was told. I just did what I thought was in the best interest of the company, the entity, and so.
Yeah. So for people who are looking back on this, you know, people who probably weren't around during that time and are researching,
Mm-hmm.
what would you want them to understand and take away from the events that occurred with the strike and everything?
Well, the most important thing is that in my work career, I've done 5 or 6 different things, and you don't have any success unless you have people that are committed to the job at hand.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to treat people with dignity, respect, and honor. You've got to be able to ensure that everybody is on the same page, and people recognizing how important each and every individual is to the success of any entity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I just, and, you know, it took a long time to heal those wounds, and so that could have all been averted had they not approved that contract, but who
Mhm.
knows, so.
Yeah. So let's talk more about the strike then, and going some background on the strike. How would you describe the economic outlook in Clinton before all that had occurred?
We were just going, I mean, things, at least in my opinion, I'd only been back for, like I say, I was gone 4 years in the Marine Corps, 4 years of college, 3 years working as an auditor, and so I was probably gone a long time. So to me, I'd always been fortunate enough to have a job and support my family. So I just looked at it. It's Johnny Carson once told the joke that if your neighbor became unemployed, the neighborhood turned into a recession. And so you had people that had to leave Clinton or did leave Clinton. I mean, I don't care whether it was Chicago Northwestern Railroad, or Nielsen Coupon Clearinghouse, or DuPont, or Clinton Corn, there was a shift in the way things were done. You know, I was in banking later on, and Nielsen Coupon Clearinghouse used to have, in the day, you clipped coupons and you took them to the store, and so that day Nielsen had like 600 or 700 people. They were second incomes, so that bought a lot of cars, a lot of boats, paid for the mortgages, and so from that standpoint, any time that you have a major manufacturer that is a huge employer and paying wages that are above market rate, giving benefits that are second to none, then you have a fallout to each of those individual families in order to maintain the economic livelihood that they've become accustomed to.
So still talking about before the strike, I understand that you had just arrived there shortly before, but I was wondering if you could provide any details to the immediate events leading towards the strike, so such as the labor management negotiations through the summer of 1979. Could you give us any more details about what you
I really
knew?
wasn't privy
Yeah.
to it,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I know that for the most part, the union, local Union 6, was presented with contracts that management, in my opinion, didn't want any labor strife. So they had basically negotiated contracts, and they were done in a civil manner from what I could observe. But at the same time, when you say of the handshake that the union membership is going to approve a contract and it doesn't happen, that was the beginning of the end for local Union 6. So I don't know what would have happened in future years, but to me, I don't think they were out to break the union. I think that when that happened that evening, it was, you don't want this, then we don't want you type of situation. Not that was probably the case, but again, I wasn't involved in any of those negotiations.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the typical, like I say, the friends I had that worked there under the contract, you know, back then, it's probably no different today. People just, you know, are prone to complaining, or prone to say this isn't right or this isn't wrong. I've always just taken the step that, you know, my parents said, you know, a day's work, day's pay. Go forth, put forth your best effort, see what happens. But yet, if people were in a position, I know that computers were just entering the area. There were different things that technology had taken over in the manufacturing process that had never existed before. So
I know that you said that you only knew so much about, you kind of explained that you only knew so much about the negotiations, so I imagine you'll probably answer similarly, but what about the July protest strike? Can you elaborate any more on kind of what happened then, or?
not really.
Okay.
I mean, it happened.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And that was their way of, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well then what about, so let's jump to more like, you know, the strike itself and what was going on. So, do you have any specific memories of any events like such as the Labor Day riot? Do you have any key memories of that, or anything that you remember specifically that you want to talk about? Or
Well, I worked for 12 hours a day and I left.
yeah, that was it.
And I mean, I read the newspaper accounts, and like I say, our neighbor had been accosted, and he walked with a limp, and he was a chemist, but we were all we're all together as far as employees,